we begin this next part trying to put together the different pieces of these scenes into a single file, which will then simplify the process of putting together the audio. Because if I want one loop of audio to start playing in the beginning and continue through, it becomes much harder to manage that across multiple scenes. Syncing issues raise their ugly head and will make you say all kinds of unkind things towards Flash, towards me, towards this class, everything else, and you'll just get grumpy about it. So most people have found that while scenes work well for the building of the animation, there comes a time and place where it's nice to fit all of this together into a single unified timeline. And that's accomplished by leaving this file alone and deciding, okay, we've taken this particular one as far as we can or need to, and creating a new file that will then be of the same size and dimensions as my original. So now I've created it. I will save this. And it's a nice blank empty file, and it's waiting for the magic to occur. So if I go into my starting file and look at it, get my scenes in the correct order. That's important because while you're building, you don't have to have this. The scenes can be in whatever order you want. But now when I want to put this together into the finished project, it's important, it's useful to have them in the right order so I can click to the one I want. So I'll go to my first scene, and then what I'm going to do is highlight the frames. Now, if I click on a tween, it makes it hard to select multiple layers. But if I click on an empty keyframe or on a non-tweened layer, so it's not blue, it's not the blue of a tween, then it makes my job much easier, and I can click and drag and select my frames. Now that I've highlighted these frames, what I need to do is right-click, not on emptiness. If I right-click on the emptiness, it gets grumpy. But I need to right-click on a frame and choose Copy Frames. Now that is also accomplished by using the keyboard shortcut of Command-Option-C, because some people find that right-clicking and scrolling to this gets to be a very tedious process over time when you're copying frames and putting them elsewhere. So it's the standard copy of Command-C, but you throw an option in. And if you're on Windows, it would be Control-Alt-C. So I can choose Copy Frames. Go into my In-Class Composite, right-click, and choose Paste Frames, which also happens to have the keyboard shortcut of Command-Option-V. Paste those frames in. It puts in the layers, empty frames, everything good to go. Now I am going to add in another layer, but make sure it's on top. Pay attention to your layers. Now, an organizational tool that works well is to click on the folder icon, and for this first folder, I will call this Titles. And now I can take these layers, shift-click the layers, and put them so they're inside Titles. So instead of having scenes, I now have a folder for that first title scene. This next layer that I will then grab my next scene, go back to the original file, go to my intro scene. Again, don't start on a tween layer, go on non-tween layer, and now Command-Option-C, go over to my new file, go to that new layer. And now this is the important part. This is the part that you have to pay attention to, is I have my first group of layers that I put in. Now if I want my next scene to start after that, I need to put a keyframe where I want it to start. So I click out in the timeline. This is the critical part. I click out in the timeline on an empty brand new layer, hit F6 to put a keyframe where I want it to begin, and now I can right-click and choose Paste Frames or Command-Option-V. And now it puts those in, starting them out here. Now that I've done that, I will click on the topmost layer, add in a folder, name it intro scene, and I can now highlight those layers. So I shift clicked it to select the layers, drag them up on intro scene. It puts them inside that folder, and you can see now how I have a very organized timeline with these two folders. So it's keeping my life a little bit more structured, so I'm not stuck with the, oh crap, I now have 200 layers and I can't make sense out of my timeline, and it takes forever to go up and down through that. Folders are, and you can have folders inside folders inside folders. So within a single scene, then you could have a folder for one character, a folder for a different character, and you can organize them that way, and that makes your life a little bit easier. So now I go out to the end, I'm going to add a new layer, click after it, F6 to insert a keyframe, go back to the original file, go to that final scene, highlight and select the layers, Command Option C, go into my new file, click, Command Option V, puts it in, click on the topmost layer, add a folder, and then highlight the layers, put them into it, and now we have a very organized timeline, 3 folders, each folder representing an individual scene. So I got to use the power of scenes for creating my artwork, because if I was creating the interior scene, it's really no fun to have to insert, and put the empty keyframes all the way out and figure out that gets to be a pain. It's much nicer to start with those individual scenes, set things up, get them organized. Now that they're organized and mostly done, then I can set it up. I have my 3 scenes ready to go, and now I just need to add in my audio.